You can feel it. A little chill in the morning air, briskness against your skin in the morning. The lawn isn't growing as fast as it used to. It crunches a little more under your feet. Leaves on the trees are starting to turn different shades of color, away from the bright greens. School's starting. Hear the school bus engines roar in the distance. Everything, it seems, is slowing down a little, except one thing. It's a staple of this time of year, always has been. Sounds of grunts and growls, a lot of pushing and shoving, and absolutely no holding. Hard workers preparing for a job. A lot to do, a lot to show, a lot to prove. Hard lines, hash marks, X's and O's, a lot of film, and just plain old hard work. And they can use these lessons throughout life. It's the season we've all been expecting it. Hello, I'm David Sullivan at Madison Southern High School. It's time for high school football. We'd like to welcome a new sponsor to the show, the Men's Mission Breakfast Club. Find out more here. The John Clark Show is sponsored by Sign Source on South Keeneland Drive, Richmond, St. Joseph Berea Wound Center, St. Joseph Berea Hospital, Central Kentucky Surgery. And welcome to the John Clark Show here at Madison Southern High School. I'm David Sullivan along with Coach Clark. This is the show, Coach, where we're going to wrap up the season. It's over. You'll be focusing on what comes up next season, of course. But let's dissect, if we can, some of the positives and negatives and what you got to build on coming out of this season. And I thought we'd start with defense.
Sure. Good place to start because there's a lot of improvement needing to be done on the defensive side of the ball. The nice thing is as we've talked about on the show quite often, is we return everybody defensively. The last 3 games of the year, we started a senior Ethan Lake at safety due to injury. Other than that senior being placed the last 3 games in there, we returned the whole unit. There were 7 sophomores and 1 freshman starting on the defensive side of the ball towards the end of the year. So that gives you an idea of we were a very young team over there, but gaining quite a bit of experience, no question.
When you look at the statistics, what do you see coming out of that?
I definitely see areas of improvement. You know, we break down everything that we can do. For example, over a 10-game season, we struggled to stop the run this year. It was no question our Achilles heel was run defense. We knew that was going to be the case coming into the season. Just a lack of strength leads to that. We couldn't get off of blocks. We couldn't run through people for tackles the way we needed to sustain tackles. So that led to where we're giving up, an average of 365 yards rushing a game. That's a pretty high number right now. So it's got to be one of the worst that you're going to see, and that's something we know we're improving in this very room right here. But there were definitely some bright spots defensively. Our leading tackler this year was Tyler Hagan, over 80 tackles this season as a sophomore. I'm not real sure on statistics last year, but I think he led the team in tackles as a freshman last year. So Tyler played linebacker for us, had a really nice season. Our second leading tackler was our freshman linebacker. We had a freshman, Aaron Sipple. Brett Sipple is a defensive lineman. We started Brett at the season at linebacker, moved him to D-line. Aaron's his younger brother, so we have 2 brothers on the defensive side there. Aaron started every game, played 10 games, started as a true freshman at the middle linebacker position, ended the season over 70 tackles. Very impressive for a young player as he did, and to watch him improve as a tackler as the year went on was great to see. There were some bright spots defensively, even though we struggled with things at times. We had a young man, Casey Dion. Casey is a sophomore, going to be a junior this next year. He's a cornerback. Casey allowed us to do some things defensively that we didn't know we'd be able to do. We could put him man-to-man in coverage and really lock down their best receiver. Casey ended the season as a corner with over 50 tackles. He had 2 interceptions, led us in interceptions, had over 15 pass breakups as well, which is a pretty impressive number considering teams could run the ball on us, so they didn't need to throw. When they threw, we felt 100% confident about our pass coverage. We actually ended up the season right now where we stand, we have the 8th best pass defense in 5A. Now, there's 2 ways to look at that. My initial thought was, your initial thought as well, when you can run the ball on them, people don't have to throw the ball. But when you go back and look at the film, talking to other coaches, we weren't easy to throw the ball on. It wasn't that it was just easy to run. It was hard to pass on us. You know, South Laurel was a team that we played in district at the end of the year. South Laurel's been throwing for 300 yards a game. We held them to 187 in the air just because we, you know, in yards after catch, there weren't many. So our secondary was no question our strong point, and that showed in the numbers as well.
So big focus on the defensive guys in the weight room.
No question. I mean, it's an area that we feel schematically. You go watch the film, we're in the right place a lot. We just can't get the job done when we were there. And we knew that was going to be the case given the inexperience, and just it's a strength thing. You know, defense is reactive. Offense is active. Offense, I know what shoulder to pick. I have an advantage. I know the snap count. Defense, I've got to react, hands-on, react, make a physically outmaneuver guys, and that was something we struggled with. But we knew, you know, some of our better athletes, some of our more developed athletes were on offense this year, chose to do that by nature, knowing that we'd be young on defense, worked to score more points, knew that the defense would come along and improve, which it did. And, you know, I mean, we weren't, you know, South Laurel game, for example, they gave us 3 and outs where the offense didn't convert. So the defense did improve as the year went on. You know, one thing that hurt us is we weren't creating turnovers. You know, turnover margin is a number that I didn't even want to look at, but I'd say we were probably minus 20 or so. We were turning the ball over and not creating turnovers. So that was something that is a young defense as well. So, and you know, you look at numbers as far as plays per game. We averaged about 28 to 32 offensive plays a game. That allows another team to have 55 to 60 a game. That's where our defense isn't getting off the field. And it was one of 2 things. We'll talk about our offensive stats a little bit more in a minute. It was 3 and outs, but also it was scores of 70 yards. You like to see that as a coach, but that's not getting my defense off the field. So that was something we worked later in the season, was to sustain longer drives. Even though we want the big score, you get the big score and then you go 3 and out 3 times and then get the big score again, your defense is on the field the whole game. So that led to quite a bit of that.
All right, well, let's come back in a minute and talk about the offense and look over the stats for that.
Sounds good.
We'll be back in just a minute. Thank you for watching the John Clark Show. Remember, part of the sponsorship of this comes from Madison County Schools and also Time Warner Cable. Back after this.
We'd like to thank our sponsors: Luxury Pets, the home of the happy dogs; the law firm of Luxon and Patterson; Riptide on the River Restaurant; Hopper's Jewelry; Jerry Goebel State Farm Insurance Richmond; Dr. Dan Sipples Chiropractic Healthcare; Central Bank; Williams Tax and Financial Services; Regal Beagle Downtown Richmond; ERA Professional Hometown Services; Hall & Sons Auto Care; Be a Children's Champion; Reynolds Plumbing; Skipworth Veterinary Clinic; Super Save; Sight Savers Family Eye Care; Mackenzie Morgan Music; Davenport Custom Guitars, your local repair connection; First Gear in Richmond; Guardian Bank, home of the $250 deal. Listen to the John Clark Show on WWAG Radio, real country playing stars and legends.
We'd like to welcome a new sponsor to the show, the Men's Mission Breakfast Club. Find out more here.
The John Clark Show is sponsored by Sign Source on South Keeneland Drive, Richmond, St. Joseph Berea Wound Center, St. Joseph Berea Hospital, Central Kentucky Surgery.
We continue with John Clark in just a second. A special thank you for this whole season to some of our sponsors: Luxury Pets, Lux and Patterson Attorneys in Richmond, State Farm Insurance, Jerry Goebel in Richmond, also to Hopper's Jewelry in Richmond, and Simple Chiropractic. Let's talk about the offensive stats, Coach.
Sure. Offensively, we had a pretty good year, actually. It was not stat. You know, when you go back and you look at the score of games, it was a really up and down year. There were times where, you know, Pulaski was a game that we had over 420 yards of offense against the team that had won the district the year before, you know, and gone deep into the playoffs. Then there were other games like Southwestern where we just, you know, we had the big goose egg on the scoreboard. But there's some hidden things in there statistically that were really encouraging for us to find. Traditionally, the last few years, Southern has had a very difficult time running the football. We came in this season with a plan of we've got to run the ball, and we felt we have some talented guys to put the ball in their hands. We run a triple option offense in our run base, which we're going to talk about a little bit more in depth later, but what it does is it gives multiple guys the option of carrying the football. And it showed statistically in that fashion. We actually finished the season averaging 204 yards rushing a game. Right now it's 15th in 5A. So that's, you know, those are pretty good numbers for a team that statistically has had trouble rushing. We ran for over 2,000 yards as a team this year. In those statistics, what's really interesting is, you know, being a run-heavy team, when you look at some of these things, we're only averaging, as we talked about, 28 to 32 plays a game. To have that many yards rushing on as few carries as we did, our yards per carry were pretty explosive. We finished the season at 7.5 yards per carry. Now, sitting here looking at that, you think every time you give the ball to somebody, it's going to be 7.5 yards. Wasn't always the case. There were games where that was the case, and we stayed with the run. You know, North Laurel is a game that comes to mind that we ran the ball early in the game, or threw the ball early, loosened up the defense. That's a defense that had given up very few rushing yards going into that game, and then Cody Russell explodes for 211 yards. We had 241 rushing in that game, you know, and that was an average of about 8 yards a carry throughout that game. Now, as we got into games against some of the better teams, you know, Lincoln County, Southwestern County, 1 and 2 in our district. What happened against those two teams is we'd have a big play for 40 and then a bunch of 2-yard runs. So we've got to get our average play to become, instead of 4 yards against the tougher teams is what our goal is going to be now. We had a couple young men that had pretty impressive seasons offensively. Our leading rusher this season in yardage was Cody Russell. Cody finished the season with 104 carries for 790 yards. That led to Cody ended up with 7.6 per carry. Pretty good numbers for a young man that hasn't played football in 3 or 4 years. Cody also ended with 9 touchdowns on the ground. I think he sprinkled in 3 catches or so for 20-some yards. But had a really good year. We'll talk about this in a minute, but Cody had 3 runs over 50 yards that were touchdowns called back as well. You start throwing those numbers in, it's a whole different deal here, points-wise, being in games. Damian Harris is a young man that we need to talk about. Damian is a freshman for us this year. Damian only played in 8 games this season due to injury. Actually played in 7. He had 1 carry against Southwestern. Okay, so, and he was injured on that first carry of the game, so I don't even like to count that as a game. In 7 games on very few carries, he had 62 carries all season. Damian finished with 742 yards. Extremely impressive numbers. That's an average of 11.9 yards every time he touches the football. So that kind of, and if you've seen him a little bit, he's a very explosive young man. He finished the season with 11 TDs on the ground, and I think receiving-wise, Damian ended up with 5 catches for 63 yards and 1 TD as well.
62 carries and 11 touchdowns.
Yes.
That's amazing.
It's pretty amazing. He was a guy that every time he touched the ball, I think the opposing coaches, as they expressed, held their breath. It was funny, later in the year, teams weren't sure if he's going to be playing or not. And their coach would just come up and say, you got to let me know, are we going to see 34 tonight? So they were definitely, I think, a little relieved when he wasn't on the field. You know, and they feared Cody as well. But I think the fear of the 1-2 punch of both of them was a whole different deal then you could just focus on Cody Russell a little bit more, you know.
The run game works if the line blocking is there too.
It is, but there's a trick about triple option I'm going to show you in a minute as well that we don't always have to block everybody, is why we went with it, and it really gives us an advantage to move. Our problem with the run game later as we got against some better teams was lack of movement inside, and then we struggled getting to linebacker level. There were teams that their linebackers had 16 tackles against us. When you're running 29 plays and one guy has 16 tackles, we didn't block him the whole game. So we struggled getting to second level, which is something we'll really improve. That's having the power to get off a double team and get to the next level is kind of what that becomes.
But you've come out of this season with a lot of positive about the offense.
Really, really did. Early in the year, the first 5 games, we threw 38% completion percentage. I think it was 3 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. As the year went on, the last 5 games, we were 54% completion percentage, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. So completely flipped the pass game, which was great to see. So we threw the ball a lot more late in the season. Devontae Linville ended up being our yardage guy in the pass game. He had 730 yards passing. Adam Simpson ended up with 129. So we still threw for almost 900 yards on top of rushing for 2,000. So even though the passing game didn't look like it was there as much, it got better as the year went on. Adam was a guy that was a run threat for us. Pass threat, he ran for 350 yards, also threw for 130. He was a threat on the field for us, Late in the season, we had some big surprises. Spencer Stone is a tight end for us. Early in the year, Spencer, first 5 games, he had 1 catch. The last 5 games, Spencer had 13 catches for us, and I think for 150 yards and a touchdown. So Spencer really came on late in the year in the pass game. So there were some good signs as the year went on offensively.
You want to go back in a minute and go over to the chalkboard and
Let's do it. We'll show you some of this triple option we've been talking about.
We'll do that. We'll be back with the coach in just a minute. Stay with us.
Give me your name
Christian Carter.
and what grade you in,
I'm in 11th grade.
and how long have you been doing archery?
6 years.
And how'd you get started in it?
The idea of bringing an archery team was brought to my dad via the principal, and he basically started coaching the team, and I started shooting for him as a 6th grader for the high school team.
All right, what kind of awards, individual awards and team awards have you all won?
As a team, we've won region for the last 6 years in a row, first place. I have placed first, 6th through 8th grade. I placed first in regions. We've placed third in state. We've placed 2nd in nationals last year. We placed 3rd in the world this weekend. 2 years ago, we placed 4th in the world. I have personally, I placed 3rd in world. I placed 3rd at state. I've placed 7th in nationals, and I've won numerous smaller awards before.
All right, what kind of plans do you have after high school?
After high school, I want to go to Eastern Kentucky University and major in U.S. history, and I want to get on the football team as a student assistant and further my career as a college football coach.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Clark.
And what grade you in?
I'm a junior.
And how long have you been on the archery?
Since freshman year.
How'd you get started?
We actually did it in gym class and I really liked it, so I just kept coming to practices and getting more involved.
All right, what do you like about it?
I like the competition and I like the fact that you can always beat yourself and you're better and you just keep getting better with time.
All right, and what kind of awards, individual awards or team awards have you all won?
We're 2nd in the nation, 3rd in the world. I've placed 5th at a tournament and 3rd at a tournament, and I'm 18th in the world in my division right now.
All right, and what kind of plans do you have after high school?
Like career?
Uh-huh.
I'd like to be a neonatal nurse.
I am Amanda Baker,
And what grade you in?
10th grade.
And how long have you been on the archery?
This is my 2nd school year.
All right. And how did you get started in it?
My friend Lizzie actually she was on it and she told me how fun it was, so I was like, okay, fun.
All right. And what kind of awards have you all won as individual or team awards?
As an individual, I don't think I've won specifically any. I've met my personal goals, but I haven't won any awards for myself.
Okay. What about team-wise?
We won second in nationals last year, and we just won third in world.
What's your name?
My name's Matt Lake.
All right. What grade you in?
I'm a senior.
And how long you been shooting bow and arrow?
This will make my 4th year. I've been shooting since a freshman.
Okay. How'd you get started?
Coach Carter had talked to me about it and just kind of asked me to come out and shoot around, and I ended up enjoying it, and I stuck with it.
All right. What kind of awards or trophies have you all won in competition?
As a team, we have won several things. We're one of the topper in the state. We are 5-0 in regions for the last 5 years, which is how long our program has been here. We've won every year. We came second in state last year. We just came back with the 3rd place from Orlando with the at the World Championships, and we came second at nationals.
All right. What kind of plans do you have after high school?
I plan to enroll at Morehead University.
We'd like to thank our sponsors: Luxury Pets, the home of the happy dogs; the law firm of Luxon and Patterson; Riptide on the River Restaurant; Hopper's Jewelry; Jerry Goebel State Farm Insurance Richmond; Dr. Dan Sipples Chiropractic Healthcare; Central Bank; Williams Tax and Financial Services; Regal Beagle Downtown Richmond; ERA Professional Hometown Services; Hall & Sons Auto Care; Be a Children's Champion; Reynolds Plumbing; Skipworth Veterinary Clinic; Super Save; Sight Savers Family Eye Care; Mackenzie Morgan Music; Davenport Custom Guitars, your local repair connection; First Gear in Richmond; Guardian Bank, home of the $250 deal. Listen to The John Clark Show on WWAG Radio, real country playing stars and legends.
Hello, I'm David Sullivan.
And I'm Tommy Floyd, Superintendent with Madison County Schools.
We'd like to introduce you to 2 new high school sports programs. Watch the new Madison Central High School Football Coaches Show with Bert Brown and the Madison Southern High School Football Show with John Clark.
The shows will air on Madison County Schools Channel 9, as well as Time Warner Cable Channel 5.
Get in-depth thoughts and comments from coaches and players throughout the season. So if you enjoy local high school sports and the value and character they build, join us.
Because every student counts.
Hello, I'm David Sullivan.
And I'm John Clark, head coach of the Madison Southern Eagles.
Join us right here for the John Clark Show throughout the football season. We'd like to welcome a new sponsor to the show, the Men's Mission Breakfast Club. Find out more here.
The John Clark Show is sponsored by Sign Source on South Keeneland Drive, Richmond; St. Joseph Berea Wound Center; St. Joseph Berea Hospital; Central Kentucky Surgery;
Coach Clark promised we would go to the chalkboard, grease board, X's and O's on offense, but let's do O's and letters.
Yeah, it's changed a little bit. Kind of give you a dose here of what we teach our young men. For us, we're trying to teach them to understand the game instead of just do this specific thing. We want them to understand the big picture, per se. And so for us, we use letters that represent the position. You know, F is our fullback, T is our tailback, Y is our tight end, Z is a receiver, X is a receiver. Z always goes to the strength, X always goes weak. Okay. So for us, that's offense. And then the other letters represent the defensive players. Sam is always to the strong side. Mike is in the middle. The Will is always the weak side linebacker is how we represent things. So we've talked a lot about triple option run based this season, and I've had a lot of people ask me, what are we really doing? Because sometimes it looks like we don't know who has the football. Well, that's the point of it. So I wanted to explain a little bit what the triple option base is. Okay. We're going to start off with a base triple option play. The great thing about the triple option is if it's triple, how many people do you think could possibly carry the football? 3. 3, very good. Let's number them. Let's give it a number 1, a number 2, and a number 3. When I call a play in and it's a triple option run play, I don't know who's going to carry the football. It's either going to be one of these 3 young men, depending on what the defense does on that specific play. So here's a great example. Let's say we're going to run it to our tight end. Okay. We're going to leave this guy unblocked. Not going to block him. It's the great part about an offense like this is we haven't been great up front, so I went in and thought, what can we do to block the least amount of people to gain the most yards? Okay. All right, so we're not going to block a couple guys, and we're going to see how they respond. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're not going to block this guy, and we're not going to block this guy. We're going to leave those 2 unblocked right at the start of the play. Okay. Now, we know at the start of the play who we're going to block and who we're not, for the most part. That's a whole other topic. Okay. Now, based on what these young men do depends on who's going to get the football. All right, blocking scheme. He's going to step down and he's going to block him. He's going to go to here. They're going to double team him. Try to get it some good movement here. They're going to double team him to that Mike backer. Okay? These 2 are going to double team here to this Will backer. He's going to do what we call a sift technique where he punches this guy and works up to that Will backer as well. We have the box taken care of. All right? Fullback's going to take a track like this. At that angle. Quarterback's going to step and do what we call a mesh. He's going to step and mesh with him, and he's going to start to hand the ball off to him. The whole time the quarterback is eyeing what we call the read key. The read key is the guy we're not going to block. So he's going to have his eyes on him the entire time. All right? This is where it gets tricky. This is why we have to practice this a lot, David. Is this guy has an assignment on defense. If his assignment is this fullback, he's going to jump him. Okay? He's going to take the ball carrier here. If his assignment is the quarterback, he's going to come upfield to stop the quarterback because this is what's going to happen now. After the quarterback meshes with him, quarterback's going to run around the edge. The tailback is going to go with the quarterback. So now the quarterback has the option. He can either give the ball to the fullback is one option. He can keep it himself or he can pitch to the tailback. Triple option. The first choice comes off of the number 1 guy, the read key. He's either going to give to the fullback or keep. This guy squeezes down, he's going to keep it around the edge. If this guy plays straight up field, that means nobody's covering who? If this guy plays really far up field, who's got a good chance of gaining yards right here?
The quarterback.
Well, if the quarterback's running outside.
Oh, he's already outside.
So if this guy comes up field, there's a good chance the fullback is going to be open. So if this guy comes up field, we're going to give the ball to the fullback. Okay. If this guy squeezes down hard, who's he trying to hit right here? He's trying to hit the fullback, so the quarterback's going to pull and run around him. That's the first part of the option. Second part is we're going to run him up here and block that safety. Get that guy out of the way. We're not going to block that corner. Now, typically in football, you watch football, are corners usually really good tacklers or average tacklers? What do you typically think?
Palomalu is an excellent
Well, you can't use him as an example. He's phenomenal. Yeah. Typically in high school football, this guy, their best tacklers are going to be in here. This guy's not a great tackler. Yeah. So we like to get the ball outside because we like a matchup out here. Yeah. So what we're going to do now is say our quarterback keeps the ball. This guy squeezes, which teams started to really do. Cody had a lot of yards rushing off of this early on. Teams decided to take Cody out of the equation, so they squeezed. So our quarterback would run around the edge. This is Adam Simpson's yards. If this guy has a choice now, he can't tackle both of them, can he?
No.
So if he takes the quarterback's going to pitch it to the tailback, who now has nobody to take him, which you saw Damian had some pretty big runs on this. If they decide, you know what, we don't want 34 carrying the football too often, this guy may take the tailback. Now your quarterback is free to run. See how on any given play, depending on what the defense does. Now what's tricky about this kind of offense is this, David, is to defend this, your defense has to be very disciplined. So say this young man has been taught his assignment right here is to take the fullback on every play. He's supposed to squeeze. Well, human nature, keeps squeezing and squeezing, the fullback doesn't have the ball, he wants to make a tackle. So he might decide, you know what, I'm going to take the quarterback this time. And that's where we can make them wrong and us right every time, because the one time he doesn't do what he's supposed to do, we give it to him and he's wide open. So it's a very disciplined defense to try to defend an offense like this, which is why we did this season. So it's you never know you don't know where the ball's going to go. I don't either. It just depends on what that defense does. And what the defense tends to do can be different on every single play throughout a game. Some games your quarterback can have 10 carries. Some games your fullback can have 15 carries. Some games you're pitching it to the tailback. Some games they can each have 5. Just depends.
Fantastic.
All over the place, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I think I enjoyed going through that to kind of get an idea of the triple auction. I hope the people watching did too.
Yeah. It's a lot of moving parts with it. It really is.
John, that's kind of wraps up our season here, and we went through the triple option, and we talked about the offense and defense. Good luck when you start. You'll have the spring, and you got the winter, of course, to get your team ready.
We're excited. It's going to be a much bigger, meaner version of Madison Southern football next year, and we're really excited. We've already started hitting the weights, so we're ready to go.
Good luck.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
David Sullivan and John Clark, thanks for joining us. We'll see you later.
We'd like to thank our sponsors: Luxury Pets, the home of the happy dogs; the law firm of Luxon and Patterson; Riptide on the River Restaurant; Hopper's Jewelry; Jerry Goebel State Farm Insurance Richmond; Dr. Dan Sipples Chiropractic Healthcare; Central Bank; Williams Tax and Financial Services; Regal Beagle Downtown Richmond; ERA Professional Hometown Services; Hall & Sons Auto Care; Be a Children's Champion; Reynolds Plumbing; Skipworth Veterinary Clinic; Super Save; Sight Savers Family Eye Care; Mackenzie Morgan Music; Davenport Custom Guitars, your local repair connection; First Gear in Richmond; Guardian Bank, home of the $250 deal. Listen to The John Clark Show on WWAG Radio, real country playing stars and legends.
Hello, I'm David Sullivan.
And I'm Tommy Floyd, Superintendent with Madison County Schools.
We'd like to introduce you to 2 new high school sports programs. Watch the new Madison Central High School Football Coaches Show with Bert Brown and the Madison Southern High School Football Show with John Clark.
The shows will air on Madison County Schools Channel 9, as well as Time Warner Cable Channel 5.
Get in-depth thoughts and comments from coaches and players throughout the season. So if you enjoy local high school sports and the value and character they build, join us.
Because every student counts.
Hello, I'm David Sullivan.
And I'm John Clark, head coach of the Madison Southern Eagles.
Join us right here for the John Clark Show throughout the football season. We'd like to welcome a new sponsor to the show, the Men's Mission Breakfast Club. Find out more here.
Watch The John Clark Show on YouTube, Facebook, RosenbaumCommunications.com, and MadisonSouthernFootball.com. The John Clark Show is the property of Rosenbaum Communications, and distribution and recordings by any means is prohibited. To order quality copies of the program, please visit rosenbaumcommunications.com for information.